I want to bring in Morehouse graduate Eddie Glaude, professor at Princeton University and MSNBC political analyst. Welcome to you, my friend. So, can I get you to describe these attacks Marjorie Taylor Greene initiated? Is there any remedy to this? And who gains from this level of incivility?
Well, the only remedy actually, first of all, it's great to see you, Alex. The only remedy actually is for her constituents to vote her out of office. I think this is a deliberate effort on her part. But sometimes, sometimes the bully has to be smacked in the mouth. And oftentimes, you don't have to do it every single time the bully provokes you, but sometimes you have to. And I think it's what Congresswoman Crockett demonstrated was an unwillingness to see the space to the nonsense of the Marjorie Taylor Greenes. Now, that also participates or contributes, rather, Alex, to the kind of legitimation crisis that the House of Representatives faces. And so, on the one hand, I understand Congresswoman Crockett's response. On the other hand, there's a broader problem that we have to face, and that is the crisis that the House of Representatives represents for us these days.
Yeah, listen, I have Jasmine Crockett on my show quite often, and she always brings a terrific understanding of the depth of the issues that she is debating and what's happening on Capitol Hill. I want to almost apologize again, like I was doing to Julie, for having to utter Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jasmine Crockett's names in the same sentence, especially around this particular issue. But let's talk about the New York Times, as you know, obtaining that picture of the American flag flying upside down at Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's home. So in the days before the January 2021 inauguration, this had become a major symbol of Trump supporters and the election, and it was flown at the January 6th riot, and there it appears at the justice's home. Senator Dick Durbin, chair of Senate Judiciary, called for Alito to recuse himself now from all cases regarding the 2020 election as well as January 6th. And he said, quote, "The court is in an ethical crisis of its own making," and called for Congress to pass a bill for an enforceable code of conduct for the high court. How serious, Eddie, is this crisis of legitimacy for the Supreme Court?
I think it's absolutely, it's absolutely serious. When we look at their numbers, their approval ratings, when we think about the way in which the American public, the broad American public opinion, has a deep sense of doubt and skepticism about the court. Look, we're facing a legitimation crisis across three branches of government. We just talked about the House of Representatives, the Congress, lowest approval ratings in its history almost, right? We already know what's happened with the presidency, the executive branch. We're facing the first time a president has ever been hauled into court in the way that Donald Trump has been hauled into court. And now we see this in relation to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. It gives us a sense, a window into the crisis that our democracy faces. But we also know that the Alitos, the Thomases, they don't care. They are sitting in their positions, not with any regard for the standing of the court. They are there to do their bidding, and we have to judge them by their actions, it seems to me, and we should be deeply, deeply worried and skeptical.
Let's move to President Biden, who, as you know, gives the commencement address at Morehouse College in Atlanta tomorrow. So faculty this week voted to give him an honorary doctorate, though apparently that vote was pretty evenly split if you want to include those who abstained from the vote. The president of the college says he will cease the graduation if there are major disruptions. You, sir, are a Morehouse graduate. You also serve on the Board of Trustees. What are your expectations for what President Biden will say tomorrow and the potential protests, how mighty those might be?
You know, Alex, I should just a full disclosure, the White House reached out and consulted with me about the speech. So I have an idea of some of the things that he will reach for. He's going to talk about the history of Morehouse as I understand it. He's going to talk about the reality of the racial divide that defines the nation. And I guess he has to speak to those young folk, speak to what's in front of them. But look, this is occurring against the backdrop of, I take it to be the most serious moral challenge this generation faces. And so my intuition, my expectation is that there will be protests. Those protests will take the form and shape that they will take. I hope that they're not too disruptive, but I think President Biden has to speak to this generation directly. He cannot speak past them. He cannot assume that they're not informed, Alex. He has to speak to the fact that these young folk across the country are clamoring, are calling for, and holding him to account and clamoring for an idea of the country that's consistent with their moral values. He can't speak beyond that. He can't dismiss it. He has to speak directly to these young folk, it seems to me.
And look, by your description there, and you do have an inkling of what he's going to say, the campaign and the White House, rather, has said this is not going to be a campaign speech. This is going to be something that is presented for these graduates, something for them to think about. It's directed to them. And yet, what you are suggesting he talk about does sound like campaign as well.
Well, I mean, look, the campaign has to address the reality.
Oh, my. This is unfortunate. We just lost that signal. Maybe we can get him back, everybody. And if we do, we'll finish the conversation with Eddie Glaude in just a moment. Oh, there he is. Eddie, you're back. I think it was just a mere hiccup technically.
Yeah,
so just your thought. No. It's so. Anyway, so the reality of what the president is going to have to do, addressing the graduates, is what he wants to do, and yet this is a campaign season, a very important one. And the things you were suggesting, it does look to the future and what he'll want to promise, perhaps.
I don't know so much about promising. I think he needs to speak to the controversy, to the vexed nature of our politics in this moment. You know, what college campuses represent is this, they're kind of petri dishes of idealism. They're the spaces, in my view, as a person who's worked there for 30 years, where democracy flourishes, where students are actually grappling with what are their values, what are the ideas that should define how they understand themselves as political and moral agents. President Biden is stepping into that environment, an environment that is vexed over the issue of the mass murder of babies, over the defense of Israel, over the execution of the war